Hello for the second Sunday after Easter and the day after the funeral of our Pope, Pope Francis. And I'm going to do something different. This is going to be longer than normal, but it's all about this Sunday, yesterday, and the funeral of Pope Francis. In my history as being a priest for 60 years, I used to think that my favorite pope was John the 23rd, who started Vatican Council, and he has been. But right now, my favorite pope of 60 years being a priest is Francis. And I would like to tell you why. And that's going to be Sunday's homily. Okay? And the reading that I have chosen, the gospel reading, is John 13, verses 1 to 15. And that's the Last Supper scene and the end of that gospel when Jesus washes the feet of his apostles. And it sort of goes like this. As far as that, here we go. It's really that Last Supper and what Jesus did at that Last Supper. And we celebrate that every Mass, the Last Supper, the Eucharistic meal. But I find that 365 days a year and many Masses each Sunday, and in all the parishes of the world, when we say Mass or they celebrate the Eucharist, in all the parishes throughout the world, and some 2 times a day during the week in many parishes. But the number of Masses is unbelievable when we celebrate Jesus Christ giving us his body and blood in the Eucharist. And then he says, do this in memory of me. And I find it super duper interesting that we do the whole Mass only 1 time a year, and that's only Holy Thursday. 1 time a year on Holy Thursday, I think we have the whole Mass. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, it was the night before he died, and he did this in memory of his passion, death, and resurrection. That's what Jesus did. And he said, do this in memory of me. But he also said sort of that exact same thing to do in memory of him at the end of the Last Supper to his disciples. And I just find it interesting. 1 time a year at the beginning of the Triduum or Holy Week, right before Easter, when we do the whole thing, namely, take this, eat, take and drink, and then he washes the feet of the apostles. And he says, and I'm going to read you that, just the end of that gospel, where I'm trying to say, this is what he wants us to do also. Namely, at the very end. So when Jesus had washed their feet and put his garments back on and reclined at the table again, he said to the apostles, do you realize what I have done for you? You call me teacher and master, and rightly so, for indeed I am. If therefore the master and teacher have washed your feet, you apostles, you ought to wash one another's feet. I give you a model to follow. so that as I have done for you, you should also do. That's part of the Last Supper. That's Holy Thursday's reading. And Jesus not only said, do this meal the way I have done this meal, but do what I have done to you. That you are to wash one another's feet. It's a symbol, but it's the heart of the message of Jesus. And I think it's the heart of our religion, the whole Last Supper. So I thought this funeral that I just saw of our Holy Father, after the first year that he was in business or the head of the church, guess what he did around this time right before Easter? Well, I'll tell you. He went to one of the prisons in Rome, a prison for women, and he washed their feet with delight and joy. And after each time he washed one of their feet, he bent down and kissed their feet. Well, I find this highly significant of a Roman pontiff. And I find this highly significant of what Jesus is telling us what to do in the last 2,000 years, of which most of it we try to do, especially in our ritual and especially in our Eucharist. But I find out why. Do we not do this more often of washing another's feet at a liturgy? One time a year, and probably a minuscule percentage of the people even go to that particular one time a year Mass when it says so much to me. And apparently it said so much to Pope Francis. And he showed it. Which not only do this in memory of me, which so many people do, the Christian churches do at this time of the year. The Jehovah's Witnesses do this at this time of the year. And the Roman Catholic does this one time a year. I find that interesting because I think Jesus is saying, do what I did. And he did, as far as, reenact the Last Supper. Do the Last Supper. But then the Last Supper is not over. He wraps a trowel around him and he goes and he washes the feet of each apostle. The good ones and the bad ones. All of them. Even Judas. Do this in memory of me. So what I have done to you, you are to do with one another. Oh, how this world needs not just realistic or ritualistic memory of the Last Supper, but do the message of Jesus. That's why I like Pope Francis. He did what Jesus did with the Eucharist, but he did what Jesus did at the end of the Last Supper when Jesus washed the feet of the prisoners. That takes humility. That takes reaching out to the world, everybody. I mean, as far as that at that funeral, The world was represented there because a young man, an old man who died at 88, and he reached out to the world that is in need of Jesus' message to reach out to them. I just find that to be really powerful. Yay, we had a pope who didn't wind up in just kings and garments, didn't wind up in rules and regulations. Reach out to whom am I to judge people, reaching out to imprisoned people, to poor people, to hurting people, and not afraid to tell kings and queens and presidents and governors and priests and bishops and cardinals, you're supposed to reach out to the hurting in the world. The world's like a giant hospital or a giant slum or a racetrack or a nice place to eat. Reach out to all people. And the least is the most powerful. Reach out to the poor, the lame, the blind, the prisoners, the anyone who is hurting. Whatsoever the least you do to the least, you do to me. Isn't that the message of Jesus? If you forgive people, or not just judge people guilty, but forgive people, is that not the message of Jesus Christ? If you love your good neighbors and your cranky neighbors, isn't that the message of Jesus Christ? Oh, and give to the poor. Isn't that the message of Jesus Christ? Shouldn't our government take out of the people who need our government the most? Isn't that the message of Jesus Christ? Not have war. Isn't that the message of Jesus Christ and the whole Jewish religion? Thou shalt not kill. I mean, the Jews don't seem to buy that. Christian world, the Roman Catholic world, in a sense, doesn't seem to buy that in totality. I find that this man, who was a Jesuit priest, and I studied under the Jesuits for 4 years, and I have admired the Jesuits. And this man who took a name, of St. Francis of Assisi, and I say priest should be St. Lawrence, but my favorite priest is St. Francis. And he acted like St. Francis. Wow. Wow. And he washed feet. And he reached out to as I said, the lame, the blind, the hungry, the proud, the sinner, everybody. Oh, what a blessing to the world that we have had in this Pope. Now I know everybody doesn't agree with my attitude, insight, or preaching, but I guarantee you a heck of a lot of people do. And I'm just considered not only about me, but the heck of a lot of people like you. Do you really buy the whole Jesus, the whole message of Jesus? It's not just going to church on Sunday and holy days of obligation. Hmm. And that's hard enough. But it's reaching out to people. It's doing the message of Jesus Christ. Oh, how the world needs this. And I found out, or I saw just in that little picture of Zelensky and Trump talking with one another by themselves in two chairs in St. Peter. And I thought, that's the message of Jesus Christ. Dialoguing with your neighbor, forgiving your neighbor, trying to work it out with your neighbor. Isn't that the real message? I have been impressed by this man. In my concept of holiness, he is a holy man. And how he said it so well, you know, as far as life is not ended, it's changed. And the message that I am telling you, folks, try to be like my Father. Love and forgive. Try to live in harmony. Anybody who tries to live in harmony is holy. In closing, I think this Jesuit lived out a theory or an insight of the most famous or the best teacher in theology I've ever had or I've ever been connected with in schooling or in the seminary. And that was Father Karl Rahner. And he has this theory of what about a Catholic? What about a Christian? But his theory is what about an anonymous Christian? What percentage of the world are really good people? And in fact, they try to do what Christ showed us how to do. And he called them anonymous Christians. And anonymous Christians go to heaven too. Anonymous Christians sometimes are better than we Christians or we Catholic also. And whom am I to judge? Only God judges. Oh, thank you, Jesus, for sending us such a powerful Pope. He certainly, at least in my 60 years, is one of the best. May he rest in peace, and may the world try to follow him a little bit closer with a deep interest in the message of Jesus Christ. I hope you have a good day.